Well, good evening, everyone. It's Costa here. Very, very pleased that Thursday has rolled along. This is the third of our BGANs, Botanic Gardens Australia and New Zealand webinars for the month of May, which I have bona fide taken the month and called it Botanic Gardens Month, with our webinars across the 4 weeks, culminating in the Botanic Gardens Day on the final Sunday. And we will be hearing a little bit more about that as our webinar takes its course this evening. I'm happy to say that I am coming to you from the mid-north coast of Coffs Harbour on Gumbaynggirr country, and an incredible history of caring for country in this part of the world. And I'd like to acknowledge this country and the people who have been looking after it for such a very, very long time. And when we think about BGANs and we think about everything to do with these webinars, it's about plants and people, and caring for plants so that we people and animals and wildlife can survive. Now, the theme of this evening's webinar is conservation beyond the gates. And we've got two fantastic speakers coming up who are really going to inspire you to think about how you can be involved in some of the amazing work that we've heard about that's taking place in the gardens that can be transferred into projects like these that our speakers are going to share with us, which is very exciting, because both of the projects Alex and Emma are doing are totally engaging with the community at large. These are genuine community-based projects that any of us can get involved in. Now, as has been the case in all of our webinars, I always like to ask first up if you can let us know where you're joining us from, which part of the world, which town or city, which country that is, so that we can get to know. So already Ellie Cheney has said, I grew up on Gumbaynggirr country, tuning in tonight from Ngunnawal, Ngambri country in Canberra. Well, welcome, Ellie. Lovely to have you here. And Lisa Fitzgerald, I know that you've been at all the webinars so far, but I think you missed last week. Thank you for being here with us. And of course, Andy and Mandy from the Kalamunda Garden Festival. Great to see you. Dark Injun country, Central Coast. Thanks, Shitai Jara. Great to have you here. Now, the other question, and if we can do a little bit of a cascade on this one, if you can hold off for a minute or two. Stevie McKnight from Wattawarran country and John Arnott from the Bunurong lands, Bayside in Melbourne. Good on you, John. Gubby Gubby country, Karen Sanchez, Boorloo in Perth. G'day, Belinda Brady. Welcome. Can you let us know, and even if you have been on our webinars over the last 3 weeks or last couple of weeks, whatever came to your mind on those nights is one thing. Just tell us right now, when I just throw this question to you, when I say Botanic Gardens, you say, bam, drop me the mic. Just hold off for a minute. I just want you to marinate that. Susie Lee is from Sheldon in Queensland. Welcome, Susie Lee. Juanita Ford's with us. Annie Casson all the way, a strong supporter, Annie, all the way from North Carolina. Let's hear it for Annie. Good on you, Annie. So if you can hold that cascade, and I'm thinking what we might do is I'll get Cassandra, who is the CEO of BGANs. She's going to come on, and let's hold off, and I'm going to get Cass to actually push the button on the cascade and get you to release it after she's spoken. So hold off on your thoughts on what word comes to mind. And I'm going to get Cass in. Where is she? Cassandra, welcome. Now, Cass, just before you have a yarn, I'm just going to take us off big screen. And we're going to go to, I'm just going to go to this screen. There we go. Cass, how are you?
I am very well. How are you going?
It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Begans so that everyone who's listening can get a little bit of a feel for what goes on with Begans, what it's about, and the purpose of Botanic Gardens Day or month, as I like to just sort of commandeer and guerrilla it.
It's perfect. So for anyone who isn't aware, it stands for Botanic Gardens Australia and New Zealand. And so we are the peak body for Botanic Gardens in both of those countries. And so we've got over 160 members now. And they're not all Botanic Gardens, they're also allied industries, so people who are interested in from horticultural aspect. And our whole purpose is to unite and strengthen this network so that we can advance plant conservation through science, but also through community engagement. And obviously that's what you will be hearing about tonight. And as one of those activities that we do, it is Botanic Gardens Day, but as you have said, Botanic Gardens Month. And there are activities happening across the month in Botanic Gardens around Australia and New Zealand. And I guess I don't want to say too much because I want your thoughts first around what you think about it. But part of Botanic Gardens Day is really getting people to understand that Botanic Gardens are so much more than just a beautiful place to visit or a nice recreational area. I won't say any more because you need to say what you think it is first.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, Cassie, do you want to give the green light and ask people to drop their comments?
Yes, please do right now. If you can add into the comments the word that comes to mind or words when you think of Botanic Garden.
All right, let's see what happens. Come on, peeps. Bring it. Here we go. What do we have here? I had large, awesome green patch. That's a good one. That thank you, Sheetal. I love that. There we go. Where's the next one? Millie, aged 11. Millie has a lot of words: conservation, preservation, showcase, plants. Millie, you're going off. Cultivation, culture, connection, science, education, wildlife, innovation. Now let me have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Millie, you have given us 11 words for Botanic Gardens, 1 word for each year of your life. I think some of us may take a little while longer to find that same number of words for the number of years that we have. So, Millie, that's awesome. If you add another word each year, you'll be leading the way. Thank you so much, Millie. That's awesome. Let's go to our next comment. Oh, gee, they're coming in. Things like future proofing. Here we go. There we go. Dedication, diversity, and beauty. Bromwyn, thanks, Karen. Bromwyn has gone refuge. Nice. Stephen McKnight, future proofing. Juanita, Kings Park. That's showing your colours there. John, they put soul into the soil. I think I may have heard that from someone in this webinar. There's no copyrights on things, John. Large green awesome patch. Sheetal, I'm going to put that up on screen because I love it. Natives, nature and beauty from Annie. Curated spaces, exhibition of native and exotic plants. Thanks, Ness. Tim, relaxation, science, nature. A place where you don't like bats or possums. Oh, okay, Giovanni. That's a challenge. Future plants and tree library for all generations to enjoy. Expansive therapeutic fields of green and walking through tapestries of flowers, health enhancements in abundance. Thanks, Lucinda. All good, but insanely busy. Oh, sorry about that. That's a comment between two people. Connection. critical research, public education. Genevieve has said hideaway, spectacular Sydney Harbour, garden inspiration, knowledge and relaxation, living collection of plants, and Mother Nature's sanctuary. Wow. Thanks for all those comments, everyone. Anything you want to add to all of that, Cass?
I think that's, that just actually goes to show that already that people understand the diversity of what botanic gardens do. And that really is what this month is all about, is, getting people to understand those bits and pieces that they do behind the scenes, and aren't necessarily what we first think about when you think of a botanic garden. So that's excellent. And I mean, the fact that Millie's 11 and she's seen all of that, that's brilliant. I hope that, is what the new generation or the younger generation are going to understand and believe. And I just want to say, if anyone is out in that, because there will be events taking place across the month, if you can get down to your local botanic garden, that would be fantastic. And if you wanted to take a photo of, it might be your favorite plant in the garden or yourself in the garden having a great time, and then just post it with a hashtag Botanic Gardens Day or More Than a Garden 2024. That would be brilliant, because then we can share that across all of our socials as well. So, and we'd love to see how many people are actually out there and getting engaged.
Yeah, fantastic. I just I've put those hashtags there, everyone. I've just put them in a comment so that you can grab hold of them and include them. And as was commented back there from Begans, thanks everyone. Thanks for putting those comments up. I love the comments from everyone's perspective. Even regarding the bats, from Giovanni, from the 11 words from an 11-year-old, biodiversity therapy. All of those things mean so much to the story that Begans is telling, as Cassie said. So, Cass, thanks for being with us, and I'm going to get into the webinar.
Yes, enjoy. You've got some great speakers. It'll be a very good conversation.
Thanks, Cassie.
No worries. See you, Costa.
See ya. All right. So, our speakers today, you're going to hear about two different ways in which botanic gardens are engaging to help conserve plants and landscapes. And both of these approaches rely on pollen. The first involves the creation of a wildlife corridor through Melbourne for the movement of native pollinating insects. And the second uses wind-dispersed pollen to understand present and past environments. And I love that this theme is being carried by both our speakers. Our first speaker is Emma Cutting, and I'm not sure if any of you have heard of the Heart Gardening Project down in Melbourne, THGP, an environment charity that combines community science and care to joyfully connect humans to humans. I like the way this was put, humans to nature and nature to nature through street gardening. I won't say any more. I've been fortunate enough, and you can have a look on the Gardening Australia search engine for the story we did on Emma. But without any further ado, I'm going to let Emma tell us about her project, because it's a fantastic story and it comes with lots of layers. And please welcome our first guest tonight, Emma Cutting.
Hello, Costa. Hello, everyone.
It's lovely to have you here. I'm very excited to see your ever happy face, projecting all of the wonderful, as that little description said, that those connections between people and people, people and nature, nature and nature. And you came at this from a very personal, really, I suppose you could call it just your own epiphany, that there's this opportunity to do something in the suburbs. Tell us a little bit about the background to the Heart Gardening Project and how it's progressed over its timeline.
Well, I can totally talk to that, Costa. Do you want me to do my little 5 minutes with the slides first, though? Or do you want me to do that? Because I can do both.
Oh, what do you feel? I mean, you're welcome to start with a bit of background and then do the slides, or do you want to do the slides first?
No, let's do this. So absolutely, Costa. Yeah, we first met a few years back, and I'd already been street gardening for quite a few years. I started in 2016, and really not having any land that I could, or soil I could put my hands into, I got out onto the street. I'd also been sick for a long time with chronic fatigue syndrome. I'd had 12 years of it, so I'd moved through that. And so street gardening actually just ticked so many boxes for me. And then I had my daughter in 2018, and I was lucky enough to grow up on a farm, and I was determined to have EJ around nature. So just making sure that she could have critters around her, she could have plants around her, and she could learn about this. And this was her life. So so it's been incredible, actually. As the more I go through this journey, the more I realize how many threads in my life have led me here. And I think I've needed that, if this makes sense, I've needed that amount of threads to get through some of the more challenging times. But saying that, street gardening, is absolutely fantastic. I love it. I think it heals me. It makes me get out into the street and talk to people and meet people while I'm doing something that's really great, not only for me, but also for our community, but also for our planet. It has incredible flow-on effects.
All right. Well, look, let's not keep people waiting, because I think the images, they need to see the images and see just what it is and how it is that you've created it. So I'll put the slides up here and go for it.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Emma Cutting, of course. Hello, everyone. And I'm coming to you from Bunurong Land in Melbourne. I'm the founder and CEO of the Heart Gardening Project, which, as Costa said, it's an environmental charity here in South Melbourne. Actually, we're based in South Melbourne. I'm also a single mum and a pianist and a piano teacher, an author, of course, avid street gardener, and an amateur naturalist and plantswoman. And next slide, please. Thank you. So here at the Heart Gardening Project, we are joyfully connecting and reconnecting humans to humans, humans to nature, and nature to nature. And we're doing this through combining care, community, the power of street gardening, and an interdisciplinary approach. We transform barren pieces of public and public-private land into gardens of buzzing, wriggling beauty, like this. Next slide, please. Like that. But we're not only demonstrating how to create gardens in public realm, we're also educating and engaging people around the importance of conservation in urban environments. And we're empowering and inspiring people to take positive action themselves, giving people hope. Next slide, please. So far, in a few years, we've helped to create and created over 100 gardens. We've planted over 10,000 plants. We've engaged hundreds of local households and talked to thousands of people around Australia. We've involved over 60 specialists and scientists. And last but definitely not least, we've changed local policy to enable street gardening to continue in our local municipality. Over this time, during this journey, many questions came up, including how can we best help our critters and how can we make the biggest impact? And I realised that we needed to focus on a specific project. So over a few years, combining, next slide, please, the Heart Gardening Project's approach to street gardening, which is this powerful action mindset combination, with an interdisciplinary approach around wildlife conservation and landscape design in the urban environment. That's the next slide. with this interdisciplinary approach, bringing together people from so many fields of expertise that all want positive change. They all want to create change. And then I designed, and now we are creating, the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor. Thanks, Rebecca. Next slide. So the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor, or the MPC, is an Australian first initiative, perhaps even a global first, which when finished will be an 8-kilometre long, ecology-centred, community-driven wildlife corridor of 200 gardens for our gorgeous native pollinating insects like these ones up here on the screen. We'll be connecting Royal Botanic Gardens Melbourne to Westgate Park. Now these are both around 100 acres each. Both these green patches, they're both biodiverse, but they're both isolated. We envision the MPC to eventually become a set of urban walking trails with an integrated online program that tells stories of the land, community, and ecology. And we're looking to strengthen and deepen not only human communities, but also communities of fauna, flora, and of course, fungi. But the MPC is not just gardens. We're starting our locals program to help people create their own MPC gardens, and we're developing our citizen science program that combines Western science with Bunurong knowledge. Next slide, please. So here you can see, this is a map of the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor. We've got Royal Botanic Gardens, and Westgate Park at either end, and in the middle got all these green lines, which is generally where we would like the 200 gardens to go. Now, so far we've got 35 gardens. That's the yellow dots, and the purple dots are just some of the gardens that we're in conversation with. And those 35 gardens so far take up over 6 tennis courts worth of land, and that's over 3 suburbs. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We work with so many stakeholders, including residents, businesses, schools, public housing, kindergartens, developers, and other organisations. We have wonderful partners, and we're very proud that this includes Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria. We've had a lot to do with RBGV over the years. Tim Entwistle, former CEO, is a huge supporter of the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor. As well as having Tim's incredible support, I've had the privilege of learning from and collaborating with many talented and generous staff, including arborists, botanists, ecologists, horticulturalists, and environmental managers. Their knowledge has helped shape the design of the MPC and continues to inform our work. And one particular program that we're champing at the bit to work with is Raising Rarity, which aims to remove threatened species off the list. You know, we're so keen. That's the Heart Gardening Project and Raising Rarity. We're so keen to work together, and there are some great opportunities which we're exploring. Next slide, please. So these 2 gardens are the closest ones to the Botanic Gardens, Melbourne, I should say. So with the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor, our work is kind of blurring the boundaries of bot gardens. It's extending it and, well, the idea of it beyond the fences, because, you know, nature doesn't care about boundaries. It doesn't care who owns what. It just is, and it needs, you know, nature needs what it needs. So garden by garden, the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor is helping people see a bigger picture. That a much smaller garden is important, absolutely. But when it is connected to other gardens, it can work with and even support a large green patch, such as Royal Botanic Gardens Melbourne, which is kilometres away. So in a way, every one of our MPC gardens is bringing focus to Royal Botanic Gardens Melbourne, and that makes me, and I know all of the people involved in this project, very, very proud. And the last slide. And this is where I say, thank you very much. Thanks, Costa.
Wow. Emma, looking at that, and I think I'm speaking for everyone because I've been dropping up the comments and so on. Like, you know, Lisa Fitzgerald's comment here, you know, nature has no fences to survive and bloom and grow. What you've created there from an idea as an individual citizen to take this idea and grow it, but you've grown it with such, and I've been fortunate enough to watch this and in little ways help support it. But what you've done in terms of making these connections, bringing in, and with all the work you did in terms of validating it with council by getting specialists to come along, by getting entomologists and arborists and horticulturists and plant people, like you've now created, and as someone said, that worm, the wonky worm, that I can't remember who that was. The map looks
lumpy
like
worm.
Genevieve Lawler. Yeah, Genevieve Lawler says it looks like a lumpy worm. Thanks, Genevieve. I mean, that I'd like to just go back to that picture because that says so much. That is such a powerful slide about making this connection through lots and lots of small things. I mean, how does it feel to have maneuvered your way into a realm of public space that, you know, is not necessarily that easy to get into as an individual, let alone what you've created? What can you say about that?
I think where we're at now, we've had to go through, and I've had to go through a lot. You know, there's been some big challenges, as you well know, Costa. You know, I've led 2 campaigns again, you know, around this local council, and we've won them both, which is incredible. But it's been very challenging. But I will also say that I learned so much out of this, and having gone through so much of the journey now. Look, it might sound a little cliched, it might, but absolutely the support that has come out of every challenge has been incredible. Not always when or where you think the support's going to come from, but it's there. And so I know that that's there. But also every challenge is an opportunity. Absolutely. Everything, whether it's the 10 months I spent on leading the campaign, or whether it was the person who's pulled apart one of the gardens lately. Absolutely, there are opportunities to come out of everything. And I think going into public realm, these are not. It might be my time, or it might be, and originally it was my funding and my own, energy going into this. Not anymore. It's bigger than me now. Yeah, it's so fantastic. It's so fantastic. But it's knowing that it's not your garden, it's everyone's garden. And I think the sooner you get past that, it's that feeling of mine. And that you're putting it out there and you're giving it to everyone, and everyone approaches it in a different way. Everyone will understand it in a different way. Everyone will engage it in a different way. It's incredible when you look at this as an opportunity rather than a challenge. It's like the possibilities, in all honesty, are actually endless. As long as you can hang in there through some of those big challenges. But I think, with policy out of the way, which it is actually, because we've got, we could have done it without that policy change. Absolutely. I designed the NPC so that we could still do it. But now we've got even more freedom. So the public-private land that we use, which might be like car parks, or there's some yellow dots straight underneath Royal Botanic Gardens. There's quite a few of them. That's in St Martin's Youth Arts Centre. So they've got this massive car park that is just beautiful. It was the bones of it. It was just gorgeous, but it hadn't been looked after for decades. So it's all these, but then they can be connected with things like nature strips, and it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Well, look at this. I mean, first of all, thanks to Matthew there, who said, I'm a gardener, do you need any help? I'm sure you can connect, and I'm sure Emma has has plenty for you to do. But, this one, in terms of what you're doing for others to see this, look at this one. Sarah's just said, I had my verge garden on the Gold Coast ripped up and grass replaced. We've got no verge guidelines. We must have grass and more across all 700,000 residents. Sign my change. Anyway, I'll jump on that, Sarah. Don't you worry, and I'll get onto the my regular ABC Gold Coast Friday morning. I'll speak to Bern, and we'll help you activate that. Not only that petition, but we will be able to use these examples of this depth. Like this is not this project. You have engaged this with the highest levels of horticulture to give it a validity and a strength that is not just some random going along and ripping up a nature strip and peeving some old school councillor that wants to see all verge gardens as grass runways for dogs to wipe their dates on, sort of thing. But that's another story.
If I can say quickly, with Sarah on the website, on the Heart Gardening Project website, there is a document that I wrote for the campaign, and you could possibly use that. It's on the best practice around nature strip guidelines, and it's got a lot of different. It's got it's looking at the nation and looking at Gold Coast is a dreadful one. I know it is as far as nature strip guidelines. So that might help, that document that I wrote. And if you'd like, by all means, use it.
So we'll just finish up with this last question so we can move on to Alex, and then I'll bring you both back in. What sort of support have you received from council?
Okay, so, well, there are two councils really that are a part of the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor, City of Melbourne and City of Port Phillip. Most of the gardens, so the two big patches are kind of City of Melbourne, even though Westgate Park is still Parks Victoria, but it's going to be City of Melbourne eventually. So the two large green patches are City of Melbourne, and in between is City of Port Phillip. So I will say that, it's been very, very challenging. There were about 3 years there that were very, very challenging for many, many different reasons for City of Port Phillip. City of Melbourne, they've got an ecology, they've been fantastic as far as, the senior ecologist, Lee Harrison, she's been really, they've done research. So I've been pulling on a lot of their research, which is, local research, which is so important when you're looking at something like this and you want it to be actually ecologically centered. I would say that the lack of support and the continuous lack of support from City of Port Phillip led me to design council out of it, but still be a stakeholder. So it's not like they're not a part of it, but they're just one of many, many stakeholders, which I think is exactly where they should be in a large project like this. I think when you've got an authority that has too much say in something like this, it has the potential to not happen. So there's that, but also I will just say that just last week and the week before, I gave 2 talks at the City of Port Phillip. They engaged me to talk about street gardening, and that has been it was really lovely. And to see people, and there were a lot of people that showed up, and a lot of really keen people that wanted to create their own street gardens. And I said to them, actually, it was very moving because they're able to do that because of the campaign that me and a lot of other people put together. And it's fantastic to see that people are really going, okay, so not only can we do it, we don't just have the choice, we're choosing to make that positive action. And that's the really amazing thing. You can have the policy, and most nature strip guidelines around Australia, most of them will allow some kind of positive change. So you do that, and you do as much of that as possible, and that creates this community groundswell that has this flow-on effect into potentially policy.
Wow. The thing I'm most excited about is how you've crafted the whole narrative over a period of time with a mix of patience, persistence, but also a good dose of mongrel. And that's what's got it through. And I'm really interested because our second speaker tonight, Alex, is really doing a project that's so integrated and interconnected. So I'm going to Emma, I'll just head over to Alex now, and he'll have a chat, and then we'll bring you both back in, and you can sort of cross-pollinate, let's say. Boom, boom. Sorry, bad dad joke. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Costa.
All right, so here we go. I'll just bring Alex in. Alex,
Hi.
great to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for agreeing to come on and tell us about your project. Where to begin? Do you want to start with your slides, or do you want to tell us a little bit about it and then get into it?
Yeah, I first of all, thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for everybody who's tuned in. I think I will just say a couple things and then go to the slides, because man, Emma's talk was just fantastic, and yeah, really an inspiration. And it's cool because I feel like mine is a little bit, hers is very comes out of like one person, super grassroots, pun intended, and just came out of this passion that we need green spaces, whereas my project is totally top down, where it was literally a bunch of scientists sitting in a room thinking, how do we solve this problem? Oh, maybe this is what we could do. So unfortunately, my slides are a little bit of an explainer. So I tried to keep it to just 5 minutes, but
that's all right.
It's like a little micro lecture.
Yeah, we want this, because this is where you're taking your science and giving it to not just gardeners, but verge gardeners and community advocates, like all of those supporters of Emma and what they're doing, and giving us this window of a lens to the science side to really strengthen why we're doing it. And bring it on. There you go. Lisa's just said, bring it on, Alex. So
and I will say, our ultimate, we're bringing it all back around to conservation. So halfway through, you might think like, what is this guy talking about? But I'll bring it on back. So let's see here. Technology.
Thanks for all the comments, everyone. It's fantastic. I'm sharing them up there on the screen. Really appreciate it. And Alex and Emma will go through and answer any of the questions that we might have got to. But here we go. There we go.
Sorry, 1 second. Technical difficulties. We practiced all this, and now.
Yeah, that's all good.
I started at the end is the issue here. Okay, here we go. Let's get shared again. Okay. Thanks for that. So first of all, I just want to say my project, Veggie Map, is it's based across the country at a few different unis, and we're doing work all over the place. So I'm in Ngunnawal Ngambri country here in Canberra, but we do work all over the place. So I just want to pay my respects to Indigenous Australians, elders past, present, and emerging. So my project is called Veggie Map, and we're actually a group of pollen researchers, and when you think of pollen researchers, you might think of people who work on pollinators, like Emma does, or maybe agriculture. But we don't even study plant reproduction. In fact, we study the pollen that doesn't make it. So plants are not good at aiming. So when they release their pollen, it's just scattershot in the hopes that maybe one or two will make it to another flower. And so this is a satellite image of the Baltic Sea, and you can see all these yellow swirls. That's what's called a pollen slick. That's so much pollen that you can see it from space. And none of that is ever going to make it to the flower. It already got washed out by the rain and is out at sea. So the first key point that'll bring me back to what we study is pollen is abundant. There's heaps of it and it gets everywhere. So what happens to all that pollen? So we know that pollen has to survive on its own on its journey to get to a flower. So it hitches a ride on an animal, like those adorable blue-banded bees and stuff we saw in Emma's talk, or it just gets blown off by the wind, and it has to survive on its own for days. So pollen's actually quite tough. And so we have some pollen here that gets washed by some rain into a pond, and over time, it starts to build up, and some of it doesn't break down because it's pretty tough. So pollen is durable, and over years and decades and centuries, the landscape may change, and pollen can keep building up. And in fact, pollen is quite a common fossil. So fossilized pollen can be found in places all over Australia. Unfortunately, not so much in the desert because there aren't nice ponds for it to fall into and get preserved. But we find it all over. And so why does that matter? It's because pollen is diverse. Okay, so these are images of pollen grains from a scanning electron microscope. You may not know, but each type of plant produces its own type of pollen. So by looking at a pollen grain, we can know what kind of plant it came from. So nymphoides is a kind of water lily. Picaris is a kind of daisy. So by looking at pollen, we can figure out who is making the pollen. So pollen is diverse. All right, put it all together. And by looking at fossil pollen, we can see what kind of plants were living thousands and even millions of years ago.
Wow, so it's a bit like a number plate.
Yeah. And I will say, I made it look a little easy there, but some pollen's easier than others. For example, all the grasses, whether it's grass in your lawn or bamboo, all looks basically the same. But you get an idea. So this map is from a study looking at the relationships between ancient Australians more than 40,000 years ago and how they're genetically related to each other. But look at the colors on the background. I see this kind of thing all the time and I never explain where those colors come from. And a lot of our information about ancient vegetation comes from fossilized pollen. So fossil pollen can tell us about ancient plants, but the tricky thing, and now we're coming to, this is what VeggieMap is for, this is what we study. We mostly can tell what was there, but we can't tell how much was there. And this is called biomass, sort of how much. We can tell what kind of plants, but how much of a given kind of plant is really critical, especially when you're trying to connect plants to fire regimes, to how much life they can support, and to climate change. So in order to solve this problem, we came up with this project called VeggieMap. So we've developed these things that we call pollen traps. It's just a funnel on a stick with a filter inside. And we're going around and putting these pollen traps all across the Australian landscape. Part of my job is to go to national parks and state forests and places that are reasonably natural, quote unquote, and place them there. And so by looking at all of those places, we start to get an idea of sort of the pollen fingerprints of these natural places. We're also putting them in botanical gardens, but because botanical gardens are like laboratories. I know they don't look at it; they're gorgeous and far from sterile, but they're a laboratory, and the experts there can help us get a really good handle on the biomass around our pollen traps, and so we can draw a straight line from how much pollen is produced by what to biomass. So now we started the sort of citizen science phase of our project, where we're asking folks all across the country to go to our website. We have instructions to build a pollen trap. It takes maybe 20 minutes. You can get almost everything you need for it at your local hardware store. Pop it in your garden, put it at school, community gardens, and register it at our website, and you'll be contributing real data to a scientific problem that will help us understand how the Australian landscape and vegetation changes over time. I'll leave it there and bring it back.
Whoa! Hold the phone. I need to put a helmet on to contain my level of excitement, because that whole citizen science thread that you just dropped the microphone with, that people can participate in this Veggie Map project. Like, I love what Emma was talking about in terms of this, the pollinator project, which ties in with, you know, the backyard bird count and the wild pollinator count in terms of our insects. And now you're saying, well, let's take it to the pollinator, let's take it to the pollen. Like that's a project that I can already see so many.
You saw all that pollen. We can't let it go to waste.
Yeah.
Gotta make use of that.
Exactly. And look, Alex, we've had some great questions come in, but you know, like I was to think about like the nature of this science, that it's giving you a look into fire regimes, to climate change, to biomass, and just what's out there, and the fact that a simple trap can help start telling stories, and that we as an individual can be on that map of yours and help you with all of that work. So the first question that I saw come up here was, how far can airborne grass pollen or pollen travel?
So it varies quite a lot by what a science answer. It varies. They find pollen in ice cores in Antarctica. They find pollen in marine cores when they drill down like far out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So obviously in the ocean, it might be, you know, floating out there, but it gets everywhere. I saw, this is probably not true, but I did see somebody speculating recently that, you know, if there's a big, say, a monsoonal storm that gets really tall and there's a lot of updraft, pollen can reach really high into the atmosphere. And they were speculating that, you know, with solar winds and stuff, if it's possible that any pollen has ever gotten out into space.
All right.
There's no evidence for that.
It
gets everywhere. Pollen gets everywhere. That's my point.
How do you get the results of our pollen traps? If, you know, because already we've got Stephen saying he's in, he wants to put one at his school.
Amazing. Yeah. So basically, we're asking folks to put them out for a year and then post them to us. And actually, what I've been doing for the last week is I've been working in the lab. This is my demo pollen trap. So you can literally buy all this stuff from Bunnings, except there is a it's not all that high tech, but there's a little filter inside that is ideally collecting all of the pollen in the bottom. So the bottom is open so rain can drain out, so it doesn't overflow and wash the pollen out. So the only thing you can't buy from Bunnings or a local hardware store is this filter. And it's not made of paper. It's made out of stuff called cellulose acetate. So go to our website and we'll send you one of these filters. And then after you've had your pollen trap out for a year, send it back to us, and that's what we'll process.
Oh. So Susie Lee has come in and said, I'll definitely be doing this with my prep to year 2 science classes. Pollen citizens science data. Wow.
If you don't mind me doing some more plugging.
Yeah, please plug away.
I'm also, as part of the VeggieMap project, working on a curriculum supplement. And so I've already developed a few activities to do in classrooms based around pollen and the pollen trap. And we've actually got, not at ANU, these are already out there, but you can 3D print pollen. So yeah, you can go, I should have put the website up there, but you can.
I think we got it. Is that epicaustralia.org.au VeggieMap?
No, it's the 3D pollen, unfortunately, is from
that's a
some other
one.
Folks did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can either put up 3D images of the huge diversity of pollen, or you can print them out, which is pretty fun.
You can drop it in the chat at any time on the live here, even when we're finished later tonight, and people will be able to follow that link if you don't have it on hand now. Karen said the reach of the internet to help engender longevity of the planet via the community at large. Mind-blowing. What feedback do citizens get who are involved? Like, so what happens with, the work that, so they collect this for 12 months and then they send it in to you. What happens?
So we'll process it in the labs here at the Australian National University, and we take images. They're not SEM images like the one I showed in my presentation. So they actually look more like pollen. They're yellow. So we'll send pictures back of your pollen that you collected, and we'll add your data to our database. And just before this webinar, I was actually working on the code for a map for our website. So when you submit yours, you'll get a little dot on live updated on our website. With
really? So
yeah.
So what that little dot will go? What people can just put their suburb. Is that sort of how that works?
So when they send it back, there's a Google form, and we ask for a geolocated photo, and so we can put a dot right where they are. It'll be we'll delete off some of the decimal points, so it won't be, people won't be able to find your address from that. But
yeah, exactly.
The dots are big. You'll be able to see when you pop up on there.
Is that it? Sketchfab.com.
That's for the 3D pollen.
3D pollen project. Thank you for that. I think that would have been Rebecca or Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. And there's another. So all these links that we've been talking about, Ellie and Rebecca have been putting them up.
Yeah, thanks for that.
What's this say? Giovanni said, well, our meteorological report on the news gives us a pollen count. Imagine if you knew what sort of pollen.
Yeah, actually, we do.
Oh, you do? There you go, Giovanni. Tell us more.
So the guy in Canberra who checks they call it a spore counter, which is just different enough from a pollen trap that it works for us. The guy who counts the pollen every morning for Canberra, his office is right next to mine. And so we actually put one of our pollen traps up next to the spore counter just to compare the two. But he goes through and does the counts, and it is mostly grass pollen. But at different times of year, of course, you have very different kinds of pollen. So yeah, you can tell what kind of pollen from from the data that the meteorological report comes from.
So I've got a quick one here. Arborists could set traps high up in tree crowns to gauge a different measure.
That's such a great idea. We actually have started doing that.
There you go.
Have you considered becoming a palynologist?
Yeah, treasuring our trees. Thank you.
So, oh, sorry. I was just going to say we're collaborating with the Terrestrial Ecosystem Research Network, which they have a bunch of what they call flux towers that they have like a little weather monitoring equipment on it, as well as equipment to sort of sniff the air for CO2. And we've stuck a bunch of pollen traps up some of those towers to do exactly that, to see the difference.
Yeah, wow. Stephen asked, is it okay to share with others? I'm hosting a school gardening PD tomorrow, and I could mention it to them.
That would be amazing. And, you know, I don't want to get in too deep, but I am just starting to develop the curriculum. So we do have a few activities that are ready to go for classrooms, and they're sort of correlated with curriculum requirements, but I'm still working it out a lot. So
yep.
If you remember the map at the end of the presentation, all those little dots, I go to all those places every year.
Wow.
So if you happen to be anywhere near one, you know, unless demand gets crazy high, I'd be happy to come by your school and teach a class on pollen. And it's
look out! I think the floodgates may open.
I wouldn't complain.
Yeah, great. Jenny asked, would that work with swamp grasses and reeds in a coastal region?
Yeah. So again, grass. We often say when we're out in the field, grass is grass. So when we do vegetation surveys around our pollen traps, and I'm not a botanist, so you know, I'm going through my books and being like, oh, is it this? Could be that. But if it's grass, it's grass because it all kind of looks the same. But sedges can be quite different, and they're really important because they grow around ponds, which is often, well, they can grow around ponds, which is often where we get our fossil pollen from, because they're what we call a depositional environment. In the long term, everything flows into where that water is. And so that's where we get the fossil pollen from. So sedges tell us whether it was wet or dry. So absolutely.
John asked, are you looking at having more collection sites in other botanic gardens across Australia?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And a follow-up there, people refer to being allergic to acacia pollen. Is this a thing, or is it the grasses that are flowering at the same time causing the allergic reaction?
I'm afraid I'm a hay fever sufferer myself. And I don't, you can be allergic to different kinds of pollen more than others, but I have no medical knowledge, so I'd be hesitant to weigh in on that. Let's say, sure, if they think that's what's causing it, they'd know better than anybody.
Yeah. As far as the overarching purpose of the study, where's all your hard work kind of focusing and putting the crosshairs?
So the main thing is, as I mentioned, reconstructing ancient biomass. So when we're looking at fossil pollen, we're looking basically at ratios. So if you imagine, say you got a little pond and all that's around it is some eucalypts and some grass. If it goes from being this lush, vibrant savanna to having one tuft of grass and one tree, that would look the same to us because it's still a 50-50 ratio. And there are big changes in megafauna populations, for example, where there seems to be no major change in the vegetation. And so some people have said, well, probably biomass went down. There just wasn't enough grass for them to eat or something like that. And we just have no way of telling that. And so the end goal is to look at our fossil pollen and correlate these changes in biomass with changes in climate, changes in fire regimes, changes in human use, changes in animal use of the landscape.
I suppose there was a question there, how does that contribute to conservation? That's exactly, you're pretty much answering that with that last answer.
Well, and I will I'll also tack on that a lot of the ongoing shift towards cultural burning is coming out of this kind of science, because it just so happens that when we look at fossilized pollen, we do all these processes to try and get all the other stuff out of the sediment, and what's usually left over is pollen and microscopic bits of charcoal. And so everybody who sort of studies fossil pollen also looks at fossil charcoal and talks about how fire regimes have changed over time. And so I have a colleague at the University of Wollongong who just got a bunch of money from the government because through looking at pollen and micro charcoal is looking at how cultural burning on the landscape was the norm for more than 50,000 years, and his was really like maintaining the landscapes, and they've sort of just gone wild since the invasion.
Yeah, wow. That's really taking this level of inquiry into that cultural realm of explanation and support of all of these Indigenous land practices.
Yeah, and it's almost a shame that it's I won't say necessary, but a lot of what Indigenous Australians have been saying all along is starting to be proven by these fossil records, and so it's a shame that we have to go like, look, see.
Finally, yeah.
Exactly.
I'll just finish these last two, then I'll bring Emma in and we can just do a little bit of a final thoughts. Alex, we have partnerships with over 50 schools. I'm up in Canberra in 3 weeks presenting to the federal and ACT government. Perhaps we could collaborate. So treasuring our trees, feel free to connect. You can
that would be amazing. Thanks.
You can direct message me and I'll pass the message on, or either way, yeah, just make sure you connect. And the final one here, Australia Gardening has said, is there thoughts of creating a pollen park, like a more tame Jurassic Park from the pollen fossils?
As a hay fever sufferer, I'd be in just as much danger.
Wow, great questions, everyone. I'm going to bring Emma in. Emma, what did you think of such a talk following yours? How awesome was that?
Oh, it was fantastic. Right where you got to the crux of your talk, everything dropped out for me though. So I missed.
Oh no.
But I got all the questions, and you answering the questions at the end. I got that. Luckily, when we did our talk, our warm-up talk a couple of weeks ago, I think I filled in the gaps. But yeah, it's fantastic that this can be national, and it can be everywhere as well. And it's it doesn't take up much space, so you can put it anywhere. It's very doable. It's really exciting.
Yeah, even in hedge gardens and that sort of thing. So
absolutely.
But I will say that your work, as evidenced by the person in Gold Coast, is applicable everywhere as well. I mean, I have just a plain, boring grass lawn I rent, but
so do I.
Oh,
so do I.
Well, I'll have to,
and it's really interesting around rentals, actually, because in this council, for instance, it's like, I think it's around 50% of people rent. So it shouldn't. We can't, when we're looking at such a large amount of land, which is again in the Melbourne area, nature strips take up over 36% of public green space, which is 7% of total land. So in this council, it's it's almost 360 acres. So if we take out renters, it's, this doesn't make sense. Saying that, we've got to, we've got to think about, whether we're moving on or not and who's going to take over. And this has actually been the really interesting thing about the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor, is that, we're starting to get this, someone sold their house. How are they going to go with that NPC garden out the front? And it's really interesting to bring new people into the conversation. How do we engage those people? But yeah, it's absolutely, it is doable nationally. And this is what I talk about, is actually finding your nature strip guidelines, if your council has them, and working within them, even if it feels really restrictive, because even changing your exotic lawn to native grasses, even just doing that is a really important step, not only for the community, but also ecologically. And also, it has massive flow-on effects, just that difference. So so I think street gardening is just it's flipping your thinking about not what you can't do and what you can do, and then doing as much of that. But yes, we should collaborate, and yes, we absolutely should, Begans.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting. It sparked a thought 2 weeks ago on the show. We had a young rental gardener who has basically been in 3 rentals to this point, and she's taken the approach, I'm not going to get possessive about, I'm moving out. I'm going to plant this garden so it can just go on, and I think this is that change in mindset that, if this reality of not being able to own, becomes more and more entrenched in terms of inner city areas and corridors where you're talking, where it's going to have a long-term rental turnover. Well, why should that be wiped off out of that 300 acres or whatever it is? Just like, we can't do anything there. We just have a piece of ordinary lawn sitting there. There's a real opportunity for us to connect people to Alex, this bigger picture around the history of our landscapes, but the currency of pollen today, and then Emma, you providing those plants to provide the pollen, which bring the insects, which take people into this next level of citizen science. It's all just perception. We can shift this perception quite readily, and both of you are doing it with these projects.
Yeah, I just to go back to what I said before the presentation, I love how Emma's project, it was so grassroots and sort of was just a natural sort of extension of your love of gardening and your desire to preserve and enhance the place where you live, as well as just not to put words in your mouth, but to be at one with nature and that sort of thing. And so it's sort of naturally it's something anybody could help with. Whereas ours was a little bit more like, how can we make this so anybody could do it?
And both are needed. And I think this is the thing, and this is what I learned early on, is that grassroots, although it's great, it's not enough. It's not enough to really create the best possible positive change. And that's where I started going, well, I've got to connect with, I've got to go and talk to people. I've got to go and train myself. I've got to go and talk to native bee specialists. I've got to get lessons with them. I've got to go and talk to the ecologists. I've got to go and talk to landscape architects. I've got to talk to all these people. And what's been really interesting is asking all those people the same questions and seeing what different. I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things, because you go, that's an interesting one. And then you ask, so I'm just thinking about this at the moment. And you get similar answers, but coming from their training. So therefore you can kind of, again, I think that's what's needed when you're looking at public realm, because there's so many systems at play there. There's so many different authorities. There's so many land managers, and to really create that change, you've got to have a lot of different angles to the problem of just creating gardens for starters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I one of the things that I'm just starting to really appreciate is that the best place in any town to find those people is the Botanic Garden. Like people who are ecologists or pollinator specialists, all of these things, that more likely than not, they're going to be members of their Friends of the Garden community. And it's such a great way to connect, because as you saw from my map in my presentation, I travel all over at least the eastern side of Australia, and stopping into a botanic garden, they're excited to see you if you're working on this kind of stuff, and will connect you with people in the community who are also passionate about it.
Yeah, what a great place to start. Yeah, absolutely.
There was one question here that I thought I'd throw your way from Giovanni. In fossilized pollen, Alex, do you get surprises like that pollen has come from the other side of the world, or was that once a plant in Australia, that sort of thing?
For sure. So it is a bit tricky because pollen is like a major component of dust, so it's really hard to be absolutely sure that you don't have any contaminants in there. But I'll share a quick anecdote. Unfortunately, I can't remember which species it was, but there was a conservation effort going on in the Galapagos, and there were all these invasive plants from mainland South America, and so they were going and methodologically basically tearing them all out. And then this paper came out that showed that one of the plants they were removing had been there for like 35,000 years, because they found the pollen, and it was there was heaps of it, and they were like, this is not invasive, this has always been here. So there are definitely surprises like that can happen.
Yeah, wow. Lily just said there's some extremely rare trees on the Fraser Coast that need to be protected by propagation and awareness. And I think, Lily, just to that, these two projects as standalones, let alone as integrated, they're bringing this reality of gardening to those areas where we live and inhabit and occupy on a daily basis, pumping along on the tram or riding along on your bike or on your rollerblades or going for your morning walk. And this has been one of the big things with Emma's project. It has engaged with people that have only a tiny little piece of nature strip on a narrow one-way street. It's engaged with people with bigger areas. People that were reluctant have just watched it grow and suddenly come in. I mean, Alex's project is this quirky science kind of inquiry that sparks that youthfulness in people. Like, oh, what's this about? Oh, can you find out from ages and ages ago? Like this is really what Cass was talking about earlier. That this whole opportunity to go beyond the gates of the Botanic Gardens and show that this science is approachable to us citizens. It's not just in the gates and the bastions of knowledge. That knowledge is out there. And here you've got Alex going around with a pollen trap, finding out what's been going on and digging up and working out what's been there and changing our cultural appreciation of who we have moved in in this country. The layers are rich and real. Do you want to? Have you both got a final thought? It's sort of we could go on, but I know that people probably have an evening to get on with. But final thought. Who would like to start?
Well, I can always say that if you're in the Melbourne area, you can come and volunteer with us. If you're in the NPC zone, or if you're around that zone, or if you're not sure, you can get in contact. We're giving out corridor kits to people that would like to create their own NPC garden. But yeah, it's there's so many ways you can get involved. You can also go to our website. I don't know if that's the kind of final thought you're after, Costa. I'm sorry to do a plug.
No, I want that. I totally want that because the success of your project is way beyond Port Melbourne and Melbourne full stop, because that can be used, and Nev Sweeney talked earlier and said, oh, Costa helped me out at Penrith. People can take this information and say, look, this is going on. And when we're talking about that public realm, we have a kind of local government structure that needs its handheld, and it gets its handheld by seeing that other people are doing it. So no, we want your project to keep thriving, because its validity by connecting with the Botanic Gardens and building that science community nexus is so incredibly important for everyone listening, for everyone at every Botanic Garden, and for everyone around the country. And so for that reason, that's not a plug, that's just a clear invitation.
Well, absolutely. Invite everyone along.
Yeah. Alex.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This has been such a great conversation, and so cool hearing everybody's ideas and that sort of thing. I guess, what I want people to take away is that science is everywhere. You can make anything science, even like that yellow dust that makes you sneeze. I've been going into classrooms to sort of work out stuff for curriculum, and we were in Chillagoe about a month ago in far north Queensland, and had brought a bunch of flowers all the way from Atherton that were so sad by the time they got there. And we would you tap the flower and put a little bit of pollen on a microscope slide, and the kids gasped. They were like, oh, it's got spikes. And it's,
I'd gasp too, I reckon.
Yeah. And then we went out into, they luckily had a garden, a school garden, and we found some other flowers and tapped some more on, and they gasped again. They're like, oh my gosh, it's different.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it's, science is just sort of like, it's a different lens of looking at what is otherwise ordinary. And citizen science sort of embraces that, and botanical science, botanical gardens embrace that too. So
yeah.
Oh.
Well said, Alex. Absolutely.
Yeah, here. And Alex, that's the perfect way for me to segue into next week's webinar. But before I do that, I do want to give you both a massive thanks on behalf of everyone. You've seen the comments coming up from people who have just so enjoyed this conversation. And I must say, our numbers have grown throughout the webinar. There's just been more and more people jumping on and enjoying our chat. Now, I know that Rebecca has given me some slides to share. And there you have it. Big thanks to everyone in the team at Begans, behind the scenes, the production team. We've got Ellen Cheney, Pippa Lucas, James Roche, Rebecca Harcourt, and John Arnott, who have been putting together our weekly series, and of course. To Diane Winkworth and Cassandra Nichols from Begans for continuing to share the Begans story. And Emma and Alex, well, that goes without saying. It's been a fantastic talk. Here's Emma's Emma's slide here, the Heart Gardening Project. We've put those links in to and then Alex, Australian Research Council Centre for Excellence for Australian Biodiversity and Heritage, and also the Australian National University. Big thanks to them. Next week, this is the fourth of our webinars, and we've got Tracy Whitby and Viv Canham, and these are friends and the importance of friends groups at our Botanic Gardens. Viv is from the Friends of Auckland Botanic Gardens, and Tracy will be chatting to us from the Friends of Lismore Rainforest Botanic Gardens. And then we have, I can't quite read, Melton Botanic Gardens. My apologies. I can't quite read who that is for some reason. It's covered by the number of people watching. So a very special friend of Melton Botanic Gardens will be joining us, and I will give them extra promotion next week, given that I can't mention their name. Maybe Rebecca has got it there for me. John Bentley. Thank you, Rebecca. John Bentley will be joining us as well. So that's about it. Like I said, Alex and Em will have a little look through the posts, and if there's any questions there that slipped through the net, I'm sure that they'll have a look. Next Thursday we're on again, and then Sunday week. So not this Sunday, but next Sunday it'll be Botanic Gardens Day. I'll be going live from the Lismore Rainforest Botanic Garden. There's going to be plenty going on at Botanic Gardens around the country, so I can't wait. Actually, I should put my melon back up on the screen. And Alex and Em. Thanks, everyone. It's been fantastic, and I look forward to seeing you all next Thursday. Until then, see you later.
Thanks a lot.
Costa.
Hey, Emma. Thanks, Alex.